Hello everyone, this is Tom, the art director of Studio 346, here with a discussion of upcoming industry work, as well as an announcement regarding some much-needed improvements to our upload schedule. As many of you who followed our development may know, we like waiting until features are finished and polished before we show them off, and that's occasionally led us to releasing on the 40th day of the month, so to speak. We appreciate the patience for our slightly wonky dev cycle, but as we've delved more into getting industries and the economy fleshed out in-game, that schedule has been shifting more off-kilter, and ultimately, we'd prefer not to do that. Early on in our development, we had a lot of small things that we could show off once they were fully done and polished, and October's video was intended to be that, but we quickly found that this is different and a lot more difficult to bring together because it's basically the entire structural and systematic framework for making industries and the economy work in our game. So we're calling this Episode 0 of Industry Work, sort of an introduction vlog for our vision with industries and a summary of the immense amount of work done up to this point. This will be narration over static screenshots, but Episode 1 will follow shortly and look at gameplay footage from the loading, unloading, inventory, and production aspects of industries. And then Episode 2 will look at company purchase and ownership of the industries, industry upgrades, how finances change between third-party and player ownership, and so on from there. When we started industry work, the goal is to complete the menus and functionality and the UI and UX for one industry, the Sierra Talc Company's mill in Keeler, California. But to do that, as it turned out, basically required making a lot more infrastructure for how all industries worked, not just one. And that required a much longer timeline than just one video, because there's Excel sheets upon Excel sheets just full of data for each industry planned, because we need to make sure this all fits this framework, and we don't plan perfectly for one and then it doesn't work for another. So to give you all a closer look at what the company's been working towards, here's more of the UI work and functionality that Tristan and I have been progressing on for this. And I'm saying this with a disclaimer that as we're doing this, we are still currently going through multiple revisions of exactly how the UI looks and how certain bits of info is presented. And while each new iteration definitely feels much more concise, that all still takes a decent amount of time. Stylistically, we continued the themes of our car inspector UI, which is itself styled after railroad paperwork, most notably a waybill. And we've been drawing a lot of additional inspiration from games like Roller Coaster Tycoon, Railroad Tycoon 3, and other games from sort of that era. And these pages here show the unloading and loading facets of industry work. They show what cars are spotted in the loading zone, and they give you a lot of control over loading either one car at a time or all of them at once. Furthermore, if you're unsure which car types are valid to receive certain commodities, it tells you with a tooltip if you hover over the commodity. So if, for example,
a boxcar would be better for this load,
that info is easy to bring up and then is hidden once you move the mouse elsewhere, so it's really space efficient and only gives you additional information when you're in a context-sensitive area for that. You will note that commodities in Century of Steam are often not limited to just one car type. Refined talc can be transported in a boxcar, in a reefer, a stock car, a gondola, or a flat car, but refined talc powder in paper packaging is a highly weather-sensitive material, so this gives hefty payout bonuses for keeping it out of the elements and carries an equally sizable penalty if carried in an open car. This gives incentives to using certain cars for certain materials, while also still allowing the railroad to simply make do with what cars are available on short notice. And as we've mentioned in a previous video, any bulk freight allows for up to 4 slots per car, so that your railroad can handle less than carload lot freight. This is especially handy when demand is low, such as when the economy isn't doing too well, and you want to save on overall tonnage and operating costs. You also have max volume and weight limits that inform how much freight you can load. Volume is a hard limit, but weight can be exceeded by a little bit, though this will damage your car over time. Also note the little blue flag in the top right corner telling users not to move this car while it's loading or unloading. We love taking real bits of railroad iconography and signage and documentation and working them into little motifs for our UI in a tasteful and thematically relevant way, we think. It just feels more railroady and fun. Similarly, there's a page for unloading, which is largely the reverse of loading, but a bit plainer and a little more streamlined, because we can search for only the cars and commodities that are destined for this particular industry, and even allow cars to auto-unload without player input if the space is available. And here's where any benefits in car type or damages in transit are added or deduced from the payout from your trip respectively. Next on the Industry tab, we shift away from transactional activities between the railroad and industry, and more towards the managerial aspect and internal operations. You'll see up top there's information about the owner of this industry and what industry tier it's currently leveled at. In Railroad Tycoon 3, you could have a base industry or an upgraded one, but instead of 2 levels, we allow up to 3. And each one changes the silhouette and size of the property and provides all sorts of useful perks to the player, especially if the player purchases the industry, granting them not just more control over the industry's operational decisions, but also giving much more profit, because now the railroad owns the goods you're producing, and you can sell them at market for their full market value, instead of simply receiving a percentage payout in railroad shipping rates. There's also a section that players can toggle to indicate whether they've arrived and connected the track to an industry, which makes the industry available in your industry network as a valid destination when loading cars. Think of this like opening a ride in Roller Coaster Tycoon. Conversely, if, say, you run into a silver panic and want to pull the tracks up from a silver mine and seek your fortunes elsewhere until the price of silver recovers, you can switch this back off to ensure the railroad doesn't get delivery orders from an abandoned branch line. Inbound and outbound commodities are listed here, along with which loading zone they're handled from and how much inventory is available for each. And this is also where we introduce the concept of an asset commodity, basically larger pieces of equipment used by the industries in the conversion of inputs to outputs. The Sierra Talc Company is a very large-scale, but comparatively simple industry. It takes in talc ore, packaging, and maintenance parts, and uses industrial machinery to grind and sort the talc into a high-grade fine powder. If you remember the Shea devlog from last year, you'll remember the steam donkey that was brought up to one of the logging camps on Ponderosa, and that's another example of an asset of this type. The steam donkey isn't transformed into something else as an output, but it's used in creating outputs and depreciates in value and efficiency as it drags and hoists felled timber to the spar pole, and then eventually it needs to be replaced and your railroad can haul a fresh one up to the logging camps and get a nice payout for it. It's a sort of once-in-a-blue-moon special delivery. So you won't just have logs simply appear on the map, and it keeps operations even to the same industry varied and fun with these special loads every once in a while. And then this is the Finances tab in progress with a pretty self-explanatory breakdown of whether or not your industry is profiting. If you own the industry, you need to stay on top of things and keep everything running well, or inefficiencies in production can build up and make it unprofitable even in the best economic situation. And even then, said economic situation is subject to change. This tab also conveys the current economic status, as well as whether an industry is affected by boom and bust cycles. Usually this last bit is reserved for highly volatile industries like gold and silver mining, and it can simulate wild swings of either striking a rich ore vein or the mine playing out. And this is another example of how we want to let players choose between stable, steady income at some industries or high-risk, high-reward strategies at others. And the last page we'll show off here in this check-in is the Production tab. An industry in real life won't fire up all of its stationary boilers or call in a shift of workers just to make one stack of lumber and then shut off indefinitely, and neither do the industries in our game. Each process is handled in a set of batch orders when sufficient inputs and outputs are available to do a production run, and the condition of your assets will affect the efficiency, labor costs, and timeliness of a batch. Real industries also don't simply sit in absolute silence, praying for a railroad to one day appear and supply them, and perhaps most importantly, neither do they in our game. One of the best and most lasting things that made Railroad Tycoon 3's economy so good was the ability for goods to travel across the map by other modes of transportation, either by simulated wagon roads or by following rivers and canals. In Century of Steam, industries will also be receiving and creating goods before the railroad arrives, either by wagons or log skids or later by trucks. Even if you connect to an industry, but you haven't connected to the sources further up in the supply chain that supply the inputs, the industry will still send supply convoys by road to get those inputs for this industry. One of our favorite little bits of the UI here is actually this little blue truck that shows where the convoy is in its journey from the supply source to the current industry. This road supply line is also capped at a fraction of total inventory, so that the railroad still has an incentive to push its rails further into the valleys and to achieve the full operational potential of vertical integration. But importantly, if you want to keep your railroad small, or your checkbook is equally modest, you have that option to just let other road traffic help out your railroad instead of connecting everything, and the industries will maintain some autonomy to help you supply by other means. It's also worth noting that at this time, things like the Upgrade tab, the Financial History tab, and other aspects are still a bit further behind in terms of completion. Again, this is an ongoing endeavor, and things are bound to change, but those pages specifically we'll look at a later date. But at the end of the day, we want to also talk about why we're going into this much depth with industries. First and foremost is because railroads were so much more closely intertwined with their freight customers than most games ever really get to dive into. In many cases, like with logging railroads especially, the railroads were owned by the logging companies and they were simply another inherent component of the whole operation. Serving those customers well was a high priority, and providing more advanced tycoon elements to bring this beyond a simple train simulator or an item trading game is a big priority for us. We always felt the biggest misstep in Railroad Tycoon 3's successor, Sid Meier's Railroads, was that they only added improved visuals, but at the cost of an overly simplified economy. We think you can have good appearances and a good robust economy and a good industrial sim, one that offers players a lot of control and a lot of ways to strategize how they run their railroads. So yeah, that's probably the most extensive system we've had to start designing and building outside of the trains by a long shot, and importantly, we want to hear your thoughts on this. Are these sheets providing you with interesting gameplay and economic strategy and simulation? Is this information useful, and is it being presented clearly in the UI? And we also asked our patrons over at Patreon how they wanted us to convey this information in the future, and the general consensus was shorter, more frequent episodic content instead of long delays for fully finished features. So we took that to heart. We've also began work on a series of shorter featurettes of items to help fill the gaps between these larger episodic feature showcases too. They will be more spontaneous in their creation and upload, and they're small enough that more folks on the team can pitch in to make them, which means every once in a while you will get some extra bonus material between major station stops, kind of like a flag stop. We've called these videos, as you've seen in the title of this one, flag stops. Several have already been recorded, and they'll allow you to hear from more people on our team and about their contributions to this project, which we think will be really fun. We hope this can allow you to hear from us more often. We love sharing our progress on Century of Steam and the wealth of history being poured into it, and good, frequent communication is important to maintain this work relationship. It keeps you all in the loop, and it holds us accountable for the support we receive. So until next time, we hope you all had a very happy Halloween, and we'll see you again with the next installment of Industry Work very soon.
Thank you again for all of our patrons for making Century of Steam possible. If you'd like to support our development, you can do so over at patreon.com/Studio346, whereas for as little as $2 a month, you can receive these update videos a month early before they go on YouTube. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you all in the next video.